Do you ever feel like the world just isn't built for you? Like there's an invisible barrier keeping you from truly thriving? If you're an INFP, that feeling of being trapped in a cage is a very real, and often painful, experience in our modern society. Stick around as we unlock why this unique personality type often feels so confined and what those challenges actually look like day to day. The modern world prides itself on innovation, speed, efficiency, and productivity, but for the INFP, these very values often feel like heavy chains rather than inspiring forces. It's not that INFPs can't compete or contribute, far from it. It's that the rules of the current system seem fundamentally misaligned with how their minds and hearts naturally operate. And the more the world accelerates, the harder it becomes for them to keep up without losing themselves in the process. The first and most immediate pressure point is the empath's dilemma, navigating a world that seems louder and more chaotic every single year. From the moment an INFP wakes up, they're pulled into a digital environment that rarely sleeps. Notifications, news headlines, messages, reminders, ads, quick-fire posts and reactions, all designed to demand attention in tiny bursts. For most people, this constant stimulation is mildly annoying but manageable. For an INFP, whose inner life is rich and whose imagination naturally pulls them inward, the digital noise can feel like someone turned on 20 radios at the same time. There's very little room to breathe, let alone reflect. It's not just information overload. It's emotional overload. Every headline, every story, every tone, every conflict online has the potential to tug on an INFP's empathy, and because they're wired to absorb emotional energy like a sponge, they quickly reach their limit. The modern world expects instant responses, quick decisions, and rapid reactions, but the INFP's natural rhythm is slow, intentional, and meaning-driven. When your inner compass points toward depth but the world rewards speed, you begin to feel like you're living behind glass, watching everyone else move effortlessly while you struggle to navigate an environment that doesn't match your nature. There's also the pressure to be constantly visible, constantly on, and constantly participating in an endless performance. Whether it's social media, workplace culture, or school expectations, we live in a time where your value is often measured by how loudly you can project yourself. Confidence is equated with extroversion. Professionalism is equated with assertive self-promotion. Success is equated with endless networking. For many INFPs, these expectations feel like wearing a mask made of concrete. They can perform when needed, but the effort is immense and the cost is internal exhaustion. Showing up authentically is one of their deepest values, but authenticity isn't always rewarded. Sometimes it isn't even welcomed. And because the modern world prioritizes outward performance over inner depth, INFPs often feel like they have to hide their true selves just to survive. It's a constant tug of war between staying true to their inner values and adapting to external pressures that don't align with who they are. The challenge gets even heavier when you consider how sensitive INFPs are to emotional tension, criticism, and conflict. The world today thrives on outrage. It's built into algorithms, headlines, content strategies, and even casual conversations. Disagreement is entertainment. Outrage is monetized. Opinions are sharpened into weapons. And for INFPs, who crave harmony and understanding, this constant friction feels like walking through a hallway of daggers. They often withdraw, not because they don't care, but because engaging with so much discord drains them on a soul-deep level. And that withdrawal can make them feel even more isolated, reinforcing the sense that they don't quite fit. The workplace can be an especially intense pressure cooker. Modern work culture is built on deadlines, competition, metrics, and constant evaluation. INFPs thrive in environments where they can explore creative ideas, express individuality, and contribute to meaningful projects. But when the priority becomes hitting quotas, following rigid structures, or suppressing creativity for the sake of efficiency, their potential shrinks. They can feel like butterflies locked in file cabinets, alive, vibrant, imaginative, but trapped in a system that only values the parts of them that can be quantified. And because INFPs hold themselves to incredibly high personal standards, they often feel guilty for not thriving in environments that were never designed for them in the first place. This guilt, paired with the pressure to conform, can create an emotional prison where they question their worth or doubt their abilities. Relationships also carry their own layer of pressure in the modern world. Dating today is fast-paced, algorithm-driven, and often superficial. Conversations start with swipes. Connections begin with convenience. Vulnerability is seen as risky, and depth is treated like a complication. For the INFP, whose heart operates at a deeper frequency, this landscape feels disorienting. They crave meaningful conversations, emotional resonance, and relationships built on shared values. But today's culture of instant gratification makes them feel like an antique in a world of disposable experiences. When everyone else seems comfortable with casual interactions, the INFP's desire for sincerity can feel like a burden instead of a strength. And when their emotional intensity isn't reciprocated, they retreat into themselves, believing they're too much, too sensitive, or too idealistic for the modern world. Another major factor contributing to the cage feeling is the constant expectation to choose a clear path and stick to it. Society rewards specialization, consistency, and predictable progression. INFPs are multi-passionate, curious, and driven by inspiration rather than structure. They learn through exploration, evolve through emotion, and grow through intuition. They're not meant to walk in straight lines. But the world pushes them to commit to careers before they understand themselves, to follow schedules that don't accommodate creative flow, and to adopt routines that suffocate their spontaneity. When INFPs try to force themselves into boxes that don't match their identity, their spirit dims. They begin to feel trapped, not by lack of talent, but by lack of freedom. Their potential is expansive, but the modern system feels like a narrow hallway where they're told to walk instead of fly. This sense of entrapment also comes from the INFP's unique relationship with time. They live in the future and the present simultaneously, constantly imagining possibilities, dreaming about what could be, and analyzing what something means emotionally. They don't just experience life, they interpret it on multiple layers. But the world today runs on schedules, deadlines, and pressure to move on quickly. Reflection is considered inefficiency. Daydreaming is considered procrastination. Emotional exploration is considered unnecessary. So INFPs often end up feeling like strangers in a timeline that moves too fast and leaves no space for the internal journeys that feed their identity. They can feel rushed even when they're not in a hurry. They can feel behind even when nothing is wrong. The world keeps spinning while they're still trying to understand the last turn. At a deeper level, INFPs struggle because they see the world not just as it is, but as it could be. They notice inconsistencies. They feel injustice. They sense emotional imbalances. They dream about better systems, kinder cultures, fairer structures. They carry a quiet idealism that can either inspire them or crush them, depending on how the world responds. And unfortunately, the modern world often responds with indifference. When an INFP sees people hurting, they want to help. When they see something broken, they want to rebuild it. When they sense something inauthentic, they want to realign it with truth. But today's world can be cynical, transactional, and impatient. The gap between what an INFP believes is possible and what the world currently accepts can feel like a giant chasm. And living in that gap creates a subtle but persistent sense of internal conflict, hope fighting against disappointment, idealism battling with realism. The pressure to conform also weighs heavily on INFPs. They might be introverted, but they feel deeply seen by the opinions of others. Not because they crave approval, but because their sense of identity is tied to meaning and connection. When their uniqueness is misunderstood or undervalued, it hurts on a personal level. They often feel like they need to tone themselves down, hide certain interests, or soften their emotional expression just to fit into environments that were never designed for people like them. And eventually, that self-suppression becomes its own cage. You can only hide your inner world for so long before you begin to lose sight of it. Another quiet but powerful force behind the INFP's feeling of being trapped is their difficulty navigating the hyper-logical, efficiency-first mindset of the modern world. INFPs make decisions based on internal values, inner harmony, emotional truth, and intuitive alignment. They don't choose based on what's profitable or popular. They choose based on what's meaningful. But today's society is built on practicality, optimization, and quick returns. Emotional intelligence is praised but rarely practiced. Creativity is admired but often underfunded. Passion is encouraged but only if it's financially viable. So when an INFP tries to navigate life the way they naturally do, by following what feels right, they're often met with confusion, skepticism, or pressure to justify their choices. It's not that their way of navigating life is wrong. It's simply not recognized by a system that prioritizes logic over meaning. And that disconnect makes them feel isolated in their choices. There's also the weight of moral sensitivity. INFPs don't just feel emotions, they feel responsibility. They notice the suffering of others. They notice the emotional tone of a room. They notice when someone feels overlooked, misunderstood, or dismissed. They feel compelled to help, to heal, to fix what's broken. But the modern world is filled with wounds that are too large for one person to heal. Human suffering is more visible than ever because we see it online every day. Injustice is broadcast in real time. Conflict is amplified. Loss is documented. And for INFPs who internalize everything, this stream of emotional pain becomes unbearable. They want to fix what they can't fix. They want to help everyone, even though it's impossible. And this creates an emotional burden that slowly turns into a psychological cage. Too many feelings, too few solutions. Too much empathy, too little control. The economic pressures of modern life also weigh heavily on INFPs. They don't crave extravagant lifestyles. They crave stability. They want enough space to create, dream, and explore without feeling suffocated by financial stress. But today's cost of living, job market expectations, and financial uncertainty make that difficult. When creativity doesn't pay consistently, and practicality becomes a necessity, INFPs often feel forced to prioritize survival over passion. And that tension, between what they must do and what they're meant to do, can feel like one of the tightest cages of all. Yet beneath all of these pressures, the core reason the modern world feels like a cage for INFPs is simple. They are wired for depth in a world that rewards surface-level efficiency. They want meaning, connection, authenticity, purpose, and emotional resonance. They want to express what's inside them without being judged. They want to contribute in ways that align with their values. They want to be seen for who they truly are, not who the world expects them to be. And when those needs aren't met, they feel trapped between who they are and who they are told to become. The good news is that feeling caged doesn't mean an INFP is broken. It means the world around them is noisy, rushed, disconnected, and misaligned with the deeper layers of human experience. INFPs aren't fragile or weak. They are sensitive, intuitive, creative, idealistic, emotionally intelligent, and capable of profound impact. But they need space, mental, emotional, and spiritual space, to grow into their potential. They need environments that appreciate depth. They need people who understand subtlety. They need routines that honor their inner world. They need work that stimulates their creativity. They need time to recharge without guilt. And when they find those environments and relationships, the cage breaks. The wings open. And the INFP becomes one of the most powerful forces of good in any community. The modern world may not be built for INFPs, but that doesn't mean INFPs can't build a life within it. With boundaries, self-awareness, intentional choices, and the courage to value their own rhythm, they can carve out spaces where they thrive, not despite who they are, but because of who they are. And when an INFP learns to protect their inner world while still engaging with the outer one, they stop feeling trapped and start feeling purposeful. The cage cracks. The world expands. And the INFP steps into their identity with clarity, strength, and a quiet, powerful sense of freedom.